Welcome back to Azimuth Podcast. I'm your host, Barrett McNabb, and with me is my wife, Kimberly McNabb. And in this segment, we're going to be talking about the Trump fraud trial and what an amazing trial this is. There's a whole bunch of firsts, sitting president getting through all of this. But Kimberly, what do you have? What do you see right now?
To me, whether you like him, hate him, whatever, to me this comes across as very biased. It's just a mission to get Trump. I mean, and that seems to be the last, we're going on 7-8 years now. You have Rashida Tlaib, she barely got the oath of office out of her mouth, and she's like, "We're going to impeach that mother effer."
I'd say it wasn't even her oath of office. I'd say that she was
right after.
It was her victory party.
Yes.
After she won, and she just blurts out she's going to get the MFR.
Yes, and even her fellow Democrats were like, "Whoa, don't upend our plans, man. Keep it subtle."
Yeah,
and it's very unprofessional.
So before she's
even if you hate him, it's very unprofessional.
Even before she even knows how Congress works, she's already campaigning on the fact that she's going to impeach Trump. On what? They obviously did impeach Trump, but to go in with a blanket, I'm going to keep searching until I find something to impeach him on. That's searching for a crime.
Yes, and obviously, Attorney General of New York, Letitia James, her whole campaign to become Attorney General was, "I'm going to shine a light in every corner of his real estate dealings." That's your campaign?
And that sounds like targeting. Again, it looks like you are trying to find the crime on somebody rather than a crime presenting itself. It's you keep looking until you can find something to charge somebody with. That seems a little, premeditated and vindictive.
Also, shouldn't your run for office of any sort be based on your merit and what you can do for your constituents?
Right.
So already very biased. So even if you want to charge him, it needs to be someone who's not obviously so biased. And just the look on her face during the trial, she is just mean mugging him.
Yeah, let's take a look.
I'm going to get you.
Let's take a look here. So this is her just staring down Trump.
She's not looking at anybody else, doing anything else. That's her whole mission right there.
And then we're about to look at the judge.
It should be based on the crime, not the person that you're in that courtroom.
Absolutely. But we're about to, I hit pause, but we're about to look at the judge.
And this judge, not unbiased either.
I am so excited to be here.
If you showed up in court for anything and you're the defendant and the judge looks at you or is that excited to be at your trial.
And pose for the camera. Let me make sure that you get my good side and take my glasses off.
I want to go down in history as being the man that got Trump. They could throw this out on appeals, but that's time, that's money. And clearly that is their purpose, to haul him up. Even if he's guilty, it still should not be so obviously biased.
Yeah, what we're seeing, and if you listen to podcasts and you listen to the news, and you listen to Trump, this is just election interference. He's trying to win the Republican presidential nomination so he can go ahead and campaign in the general election. And again, pundits, even Democratic pundits, have kind of done a little wink and nod, and that this is a little bit of a trying to slow him down, kind of hit him in the shins, so it kind of slows him down. But the weird thing is every time he gets indicted with a new indictment, he gains 5 points in the polls, and so sometimes I think you can protest too much. Yes. And I think the American public is seeing this come on, you're just throwing all of this at him right now. And
Methinks thou does protest too much.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but we're talking about the fraud trial. So there's lots of legal. There's the government secret documents, classified information documents trial. There's the the January 6th.
Name it. There's
trial.
Probably one out there or coming.
But we're focusing on the fraud trial that's taking place in New York City right now. In fact, as of the taping of this episode, Ivanka Trump is
she's
in the
been
middle
dragged
of her
in too.
Middle of her testimony.
Thought she was going to get away with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Away unscathed. But anyway, this clearly biased judge, all too happy to be there, or just enjoys his job way too much every day. I don't know.
Sure.
But he issued a pre-trial ruling. How can you have a ruling before the trial? I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah,
I'm a stupid accountant. So someone please explain that to me.
So I mean, being a criminal justice major, having a degree in criminal justice, I can look and apply some of this. So while I'm not an attorney, there are two things that could have happened. One was the rumor that there was a box that needed to be checked, and Trump's attorneys needed to check it in order to have a jury trial versus a bench trial. And a bench trial means you just have the judge. And there was this, I didn't get a chance to see the documents, but supposedly there was a rumor that they had forgotten to check a jury trial, and so they had the bench trial. Now, the other thing that I've heard is that the way that the prosecution filed the charges, this particular trial wasn't eligible for a jury trial, and therefore was only for a bench trial. I don't know which is correct, but doesn't matter. We have a bench trial. We have the judge. And one of the weirdest things that we're seeing is, you're right, this pretrial hearing, and Trump has been found guilty of fraud by the judge, and Trump had not testified, but we do have lots of taped depositions and things like that. But in looking at what some of these valuations are that the judge has done, we're not real estate brokers, but we know how to use the internet, and we've gone on Zillow. Mm-hmm. Right. And we can see that the judge put the valuation on Mar-a-Lago at $18 million. Well, if you can go to Zillow yourself, just Zillow.com, and this is not a paid sponsorship or anything, but we are available. But still, we just happen to use that particular one because it's pretty easy to use. But we went and looked, and the houses that surround Mar-a-Lago that have a tenth, or even there's a house that's directly north, I think it's 3 streets north, it's worth $50 million, and it has a quarter of the property. That not only is the structure that's on this smaller than the club of Mar-a-Lago, or even the guest houses, but the actual front lawn or back lawn or whatever it is, the terrain, that the acreage is quarter of the size, and it's only on the bay side of the island, whereas Mar-a-Lago goes the width of the island, from the bay side all the way to the Atlantic Ocean, and there are 24 million. The particular one that we talked about was a quarter of the size, 50 million. So I mean, that's
to claim 18 million, and then he paid $10 million for it in 1985. So 38 years ago, and 38 years only go up $8 million. And yes, it's 80% increase, but still, okay, take our house, for instance. We bought our house in 2016, and 7 houses down the same street, same side of the tracks, and everything, similar square footage, similar
one less
layout,
bathroom.
one less bathroom. It is 67% more expensive than what we paid for our house in just 2016. 7 years.
7 years.
67% in 7 years. You're telling me 38 years, 80%? Way more touristy area, come on.
And Mar-a-Lago is a business, and you did the research on what they made.
So 2014, the compilation report, which we'll touch on in a minute, the compilation report was 2014. In 2014, Mar-a-Lago made $10 million. So they made the same amount of money that the property cost in 1985. And if you sell a business, oftentimes they'll use the earnings to evaluate that business. Now, Barrett, you've interacted with people who've sold their businesses. Can you speak to like earnings, what that relates to in selling it, which is the value?
And that you're exactly right. When we're small business owners, and I've helped people buy and sell their businesses, and we're in the medical industry for the vast majority of our businesses, and we use something called EBITDA. Right, the earnings before taxes, interest, depreciation, and amortization, and so we basically that's a 12-month profit, and then you do a multiple of that 12-month profit, and so the businesses that we're in are going for about a 4.6 multiple, and so you would take your annual. So you in this instance,
if you take $10 million times
4.6,
that's $46 million.
Right.
So.
And that's only in our industry. In his industry, and his brand probably has a lot more valuation to it because of the Trump brand.
Yes, and this is a judge, doing this. This is not an accountant or realtor, and he claimed that he just used the property tax assessor. Well, I know for us, we bought our house 7 years ago, and according to Harris County in Texas, our house is only increased by like 0.25% in value.
Right.
If you go onto Zillow, again, it's Zillow. I mean, it could vary, but they have our house increasing by 21%. So you go from 0.25 to 0.25% to 21%.
Yeah. So obviously there's a little bit of leeway there.
100%. 100 points.
But as far as I know, this judge does not have a real estate license, and just seems to be arbitrarily using the taxes as his basis to find that Trump did inflate his properties. And I mean,
and this is just one of the properties, but this is an example. This one could argue probably based just on this portion that there's some bias here. Anyway,
this makes me sad. It makes me sad that there's this this obvious bias. You can be a
good legal mind and still be really bad at math, because I can't tell you how many pre-med students I met in college had photographic memories, never had to study. Everyone else was struggling with organic chemistry. They aced it. They didn't have to repeat the class, but horrible at their finances. Went to the same schools that I did and came out with like 20 times more debt. It was ridiculous.
Right.
Because they had to have the latest computers and a new car. And I'm like, you're a college student. You're not supposed to have that stuff yet.
But A.G. Jones, I mean, looking at her big thing is the numbers aren't going to lie. And that's the
but
the
it
smartest
depends
thing.
on what numbers
What numbers you look at.
use.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're looking at the ones that are the disadvantage Trump the most as your statement of fact, as your truth, that's not really what the valuation is. That's just what he's paying in property taxes.
And plus, there are different valuation methods, and Trump claimed it was like $328 million. It may not be, but it definitely is not close to 18. I'm pretty confident in that.
Now, what about these gag orders?
Is it gag orders? That's just an excuse to get
money
money out of
the
Trump.
judge said,
"Do you know
Trump is mean? Trump has been mean to my clerk, and he can't be mean, and so therefore,
well, also
gag."
That is not a realistic expectation with Donald Trump. You may as well just ask him to fork over, what was it, $15,000 in
it was a
fees,
$5,000 fine, and then it went up,
10,000,
then a $10,000 fine.
So, and some people are like, oh, is it constitutional with freedom of speech? I mean, sometimes gag orders will be issued to protect, possible witnesses, keep the defendant from interacting with them. So there's precedent for that part, unfortunately. Sure. Now, I've heard some podcasters talk about the compilation report, where it lists what Donald Trump puts his valuation of.
And what's
of,
a compilation report?
So, some podcasters are like, oh, well, he just used this compilation report from accountant. You could trust it. Well, here's the thing. Accountants can, besides financial statements, they can issue 3 different types of reports based on financial statements, and those provide different levels of assurances in their accuracy.
Okay.
So a compilation is the lowest level, and in some states you don't even need to have a CPA license, and so you could basically have a bookkeeper. You can go to a technical school for however many months, become a certified bookkeeper or whatever, or not even that. So it depends on the state. And you could just have Donald Trump right there talking to you while you work on their QuickBooks. And there are a couple standardized statements that go at the beginning of a report, and you don't even need to be independent most of the time. So that's not very sturdy ground to base it on. And, it's up to the banking institution what level of assurance they want.
And what are some other levels?
So the bankers, when they issue out a loan and they say what type of report they want, they know full well the subjectivity or objectivity of the report. So the next level of assurance is called a review report. You have to be a CPA, and it just states that you're not aware of material misstatements, and they generally go by accepted accounting principles. And then the gold bar standard is the audited financial statements. And if you are going to go public on Wall Street or something, you're going to have an audit. And whereas a compilation report, it may take you as little as an hour to do a compilation report.
And
Audits,
that would be with like a third-party vendor, like a big accounting firm.
I mean, a lot of people go to, for a compilation, you don't even need to be an accounting firm. But for audited financial statements, absolutely. And that process can take from weeks to months. And so if you have inventory, they're going to do samples of your inventory. If you have accounts receivable, which what business doesn't, hopefully, they're going to talk to people who owe you money and make sure that that is the case, and look at any supporting documents related to that. If you have loans, they're going to look at the loan statements and, if the interest rate makes sense or not, and if payments have been, made. They're going to look at your tax returns. They're going to look at just about every type
It's kind of the microscope
asset and transaction that you have.
Okay.
And make sure it's up to snuff. And so that's the gold standard. So if Donald Trump had audited financial statements, then okay. But yeah, the compilation report is not worth a whole lot. And then some podcasters have pointed out that he walked into court with a document in his pocket of his jacket called a disclaimer clause. And, a lot of things come with disclaimer clauses, and you don't hear about people getting sued. And it's basically Donald Trump saying, hey, banker giving me this loan, you should go with your own discretion, basically.
Do your own due diligence. Right?
Yes, exactly. So, and the judge didn't go with this, which, again, I say he's a little biased.
Well, is this, predetermined? He's he even said, Mr. Trump and A.G. Jones also.
They refuse to address him as former President Trump.
President Trump or former president. It's always Mr.
I'm sure they call their teachers by their first names as well.
Right. But anyway, the as far as having this preordained, he's already said, look, Mr. Trump, I've already found you guilty of fraud. Now we just need to figure out, the rest and how deep does it go. And, all I can see is, with Trump kind of lashing out and being asked questions. Obviously, there's not cameras in the court. There's not an audio. We'd have to wait to see what the transcript actually, is when the court reporter publishes it. Mm-hmm. But apparently, the prosecution asked President Trump open-ended questions. And if you ask an open-ended question, you get an open-ended answer. If you ask a yes or no question, you get a yes or no answer.
Yeah.
And the
What do you expect, Judge?
Yeah, exactly. And we all know that President Trump's a talker. And so the answer was in there somewhere, but, obviously he did, talk about how this trial is unfair and this, that, and the other. And the judge kept admonishing Trump and talking to Trump's counsel, saying, "Hey, look, you need to control your client." And the attorney said, "Well, the prosecution's asking open-ended questions, and so Trump gets to have an answer, and you should be interested in hearing what he has to say." And this, as a quote, "This really bothers me." The judge saying, "I really don't want to hear what your client has to say." That's literally the whole point
reason why you're there
of a bench trial, is the judge needs to hear all of these things. And the only thing, if I was an attorney, which I'm not, I would have immediately moved for a mistrial. And I would have said, the judge, you have literally just not done your job. Your job is to listen to what the witness has to say and then balance that against the case that the prosecution brought. Not say, "I really don't want to hear what your client has to say." That is a fail. That is a fail on the judge's part. And if I was Trump's attorney, I would have immediately objected and said, I'm requesting a mistrial, because obviously this is judicial incompetence. But as far as I know, he did hit the table and he yelled at Trump's attorneys to sit down. So I don't know what kind of kangaroo court. We don't have a gag order on us. So I don't really know what kangaroo court this guy has and his clerk. But this is just setting him up for an appeal.
Lack of professionalism, which I tried to warn you about before you got in the military. Like, civilians are way less professional than you'll expect them to be. Exhibit A.
Yeah, I mean, but there's an expectation of decorum, right? And
Yes.
and I got it. Trump is a little bombastic, but still to say, "I don't want to hear what your client has to say." His job as a judge is to find the truth in the words that Trump is speaking, and so that's what his job is. I mean, that's what his job is, and so all I can see is appeal, appeal, appeal. And the advantage of the appeal is that typically, if there's fines assessed or there's jail time assessed or anything like that, you get to stay out or not pay your fine while the appeals process is going on, which is hugely to Trump's advantage. In fact, he is
$250 million. It's a lot of money for anyone.
Yeah, it's a lot of money, but still, for all of his court cases, I mean, he's asking for continuances. The secret document trial, the federal government had 3 years to come up with their case, and so he's like, "I need 3 years."
That's another question I've had. What is the statute of limitations on this? Because this compilation report was 2014, so he's making these statements in 2014. I wonder what the statute of limitations is. That's 9 years ago.
Yeah, maybe we'll do some research and we'll put it in the comments, or maybe you guys can tell us what the statute of limitations for those of you that are listening in New York. Leave it in the comments and we'll be more than happy to take a look at it. But it is kind of interesting because New York really wanted to go after Trump, and they passed that law that eliminated statutes of limitations for sexual assault cases for a period of only 1 year. And who was the one person that got roped into that was Trump, and he was found guilty of
you changed the law for one person.
One person for 1 year.
That does not sound American. That sounds like third world regime to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's we have to get Donald Trump. We're going to change the law 1 year, free for all, and then it goes away. And so he just. The appeal process is going to take a long time, and what's going to happen is all this is going to be pushed back until after the election. And I again, every time he gets indicted, it's another 5 points. So
when will they learn?
And all of these are going, even if he's found guilty, all of these are going to be appealed, and he's not going to be in jail. A lot of people say, "Oh, he'll serve his first year as president if he wins re-election in jail." No, he won't. First of all, they're not going to continue to prosecute him while he's a sitting president. But second of all, the appeals process, you're out of jail during the appeal unless you're a violent person and a flight risk and all that kind of stuff. But he has police with him, federal law enforcement officers.
He's the most recognizable person on
24/7.
Earth.
Yeah.
So he's not going anywhere.
He's not going anywhere. And plus, if he went somewhere, he wouldn't be president, and so he'll miss the general election. But still, I think the judge has obviously shown his bias. There's no way that this is not going to get appealed, and I would think that I'm not a legal attorney, and I didn't stay in a Holiday Inn Express last night, not sponsored. But I just feel in my gut that this is just an appeal waiting to happen.
Yeah. So whether you love him, hate him, want him to go to jail, pay his fine, or don't want him to, our verdict is this is a biased trial.
Yep, I agree. Openly biased. So that concludes this segment of Azimuth Podcast. Please stay tuned after these messages.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy our show with all the stories we share, we would love your support.
And it's as easy as clicking that subscribe or follow button. This will ensure you never miss an episode and keeps us bringing you these important stories. Your support makes a huge difference. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast family.
Thanks, and keep tuning in.